Title: He saw the fugitive Apache woman bathing in the creek for just a moment, and it changed his life forever. Short story. He never meant to see her. Elias Turner had come to that quiet stretch of Arizona creek to wash the dust from his eyes after 3 days on the trail. The sun was sliding low, turning the water gold, when he caught a glimpse of movement beneath the cottonwoods. And there she was, an Apache woman, slender, weary, bathing quietly in the shallows, but looking over her shoulder with the fear of someone who had been running too long. Elias froze, not out of shock, but out of something deeper, something he couldn't name yet. He stepped back, careful not to make a sound, but a twig snapped under his boot. Her head snapped toward him, eyes wide, arms lifted defensively, not with shame, but with the fierce dignity of someone who refused to be broken. And in that single heartbeat, Elias understood more about fear, pride, and desperation than he had in his whole life. But before we continue this powerful story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to channel Lika, where every story reminds us that kindness still matters. Elias raised both hands slowly. "I'm not here to harm you," he whispered. She didn't speak, didn't move, but her trembling eased barely. Then he noticed the cut across her shoulder, fresh, deep, still bleeding into the water. Someone had been chasing her, someone who meant no good. Elias set his canteen on the ground and stepped back again. "For when you're ready," he said, voice steady. Then he turned away, giving trust before he expected any in return. He expected nothing else to come of it. But the world has a way of circling back when compassion plants its roots. That night, as Elias made camp beneath the cliffs, he heard a soft shuffle behind him. He didn't turn immediately. He didn't want to startle her. When he finally looked, she stood barely 5 feet away, wrapped in a rough blanket, her injured shoulder now cleaned and bandaged with a strip of cloth. His cloth. She had taken it from the canteen pouch. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she pointed to the darkness beyond the ridge. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Men incoming." Elias's gut tightened. "How many?" She held up 3 fingers. They weren't looking for him, they were hunting her. And she had warned him anyway. He didn't know her name, her story, or what she was running from. But her choice to return to warn him, when she could have just kept running, was the first twist he never expected. The second twist came minutes later when the men arrived. They weren't lawmen. Elias could see that right away. Too eager, too cruel in their eyes. Bounty hunters, the kind who created trouble just to get paid for ending it. Elias stepped in front of her without thinking. "You boys are on the wrong side of the canyon," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. One of them sneered. "That woman there? She's worth a month's pay. Step aside." But he didn't, he couldn't. Something had shifted in him the moment he saw her standing in that creek, hurt, hunted, human. "Not tonight," he said quietly. The fight was quick, desperate, and chaotic. Elias wasn't a soldier, but he was stubborn, and he bought her enough time to slip behind the rocks. When the dust settled, the bounty hunters limped back toward the ridge, shouting threats, but unwilling to push a man who stood his ground harder than they expected. When they were gone, Elias collapsed to one knee, breath ragged, and she rushed to him. Her hands, surprisingly gentle, steadied his shoulder. For the first time, she spoke more than a single word. "You protect me," she said softly. "Why?" Elias didn't have a heroic answer. He didn't even have a clear reason. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe because someone should." Her expression softened, not with gratitude, but with something deeper. Recognition. Understanding. A sense that for the first time in a long time, she had met someone who saw her as a person, not a prize. She pressed her palm lightly to his chest, just once, then stepped back. "My name is Naeli," she said. He smiled. "Elias." She nodded, then pointed east. "I go, you stay safe." But Elias shook his head. "You shouldn't keep running alone." Her eyes glistened, not with fear this time, but with the weight of someone who finally believed she wasn't alone in the world. For 2 days they traveled together, silent at times, speaking only in gestures, sharing the fire, sharing the danger, and slowly sharing something else. Something like trust. When they finally reached the mountains where her people hid deep among the pines, Naeli stopped and touched his arm. "You changed my path," she said. Then after a pause, "I change yours." Elias didn't know what she meant until months later, when he found himself returning again and again to those mountains. Always welcomed, always known by name, always treated not as an outsider, but as someone who had once chosen kindness when it mattered. And in time, he realized the moment at the creek hadn't changed just her life. It had changed his. Because sometimes the smallest act of compassion, a warning, a gesture, a willingness to stand up for someone who can't, becomes the turning point of a lifetime. And that's the message this story leaves us with. Kindness may not always be easy, but it is never forgotten. And sometimes it becomes the beginning of everything good.